Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sean Kemp, former president of the Western Alumni Association Board, and it is my honor to welcome you to the June Virtual Artist Studio Tour. I'm joined today by Western faculty member and artist, Dr. Arūnas Ošlapas. Arūnas has taught industrial design at Western for 3 decades. In fact, 23 years ago, I was one of Arūnas's students. Western's industrial design program is recognized for the caliber of its graduates, who are highly sought after by companies all around the world. Arūnas balances his academic life with his artistic pursuits, designing and weaving these stunning metal baskets and quilts. Today, we'll be spending time getting to know Arūnas and his art with a behind-the-scenes tour of his studio, where we'll learn insights about how his art and what inspires him. And we are super fortunate to have Meg Weber moderating the tour for us today. Meg is the Director of Community Engagement and Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Western. As we tour today, please use the question and answer feature at the bottom of your Zoom area to ask any questions you might have. Also, use that chat feature freely to share your thoughts, impressions, suggestions, or anything else at any time, and we'll all be here interacting with those. So I hope you enjoy this tour. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Meg, to take us behind the scenes with Arūnas.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. What a delight to be here today. And yeah, to echo Sean's wonderful comment, please do actively use the chat and the Q&A. Arūnas, it is so much fun to be here with you today and so great to have been introduced by one of your students, who I hear was a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's great to see Sean. He's one of the lucky ones that was able to come back and return to Bellingham.
Yeah.
But, you know, on a positive note, Sean was a big thinker.
Yeah.
And, the little details, he said, don't bother me with drawing or model making. He had bigger things in mind when he did his work. And I'm not surprised to see how far and fast he's gone in his career.
That's awesome. Yeah, Sean is fantastic. And what an interesting and cool coincidence that you started the basket venture around the same time that Sean was a student in your program.
Exactly. Yeah, that was about 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Or longer, actually. Yeah, right about when he was there. When he was there, those were the experimental pieces. And
That's, yeah, so awesome. So you have had such a remarkable past and background, and what an amazing impact on students. We share many students in common, and they just rave on what they've learned and grown and how they've developed in your teaching. So would you give us a little bit of a background of what's brought you here today to the point that you're at in your career with us at Western and as an artist?
well, as far as Western and education go, I just enjoy teaching. I love being in the classroom. I like the hypothetical, conceptual nature of academia. Um, there's a lot of positiveness
Yeah.
uh, at universities, and Western is the great incubator for the mind. And being around the students keeps me young. I'm 84 years old now, but it really it keeps me going. And anyway, their energy is fantastic. And as far as the art, part of that is you need a break, and technology drives a lot of disciplines. Industrial design is heavy with technology, CAD and 3D printing and laser cutting. And, there's a lot of research now into alternative reality and AI and things like that. Anyway, art is a great break for me, especially in the summers
Yeah.
when I can get manual,
Yeah.
when I can go analog and work with my hands and, just get away from the computer and the sketching, the digital stuff.
That's
So
awesome. Well, I can't wait to be toured your studio. So let's see that video and connect with your studio space.
great. Welcome to my home and Red Rivet Studios in Bellingham, Washington. My name is Arūnas Ošlapas, and as I descend the stairs from my bedroom, I enter the Rivet Studios office space. This is where I've been teaching industrial design courses for over a year. In addition, this is where the creation of my art begins. One door away is the studio shop space, where metal baskets are woven and metal quilts pieced together. There's a mixture of woodworking and metalworking tools, and materials are stored in plastic bins below the bench tops. Hardware, tape, assorted metal letters, and even a collection of miscellaneous toys are stored for easy access. Painted strips are arranged by color and incorporated into metal quilts. On the opposite wall of the workspace are past and ongoing projects, as well as surplus tools and items of inspiration. Going outside, through the double doors, is a covered painting area where paint is sprayed and baskets are woven. And beyond the painting area lie hundreds of pounds of rusted steel waiting to be tamed.
What an impressive studio. My goodness. I love like the blend of bright order and like future envisioning. That is just such a remarkable studio you have there.
Oh, thank you. I am a bona fide pack rat, and my wife is exactly the opposite. So if I leave anything, out of place, out of hand, she'll throw it away. When I would come back from the business trip, the kids would secretly tell me, "Mom threw this and this away," and I put it in the bag in the shed. Anyway, but part of that pack ratness, I need to know where everything is, and so I meticulously organize it and put things. Everything has one spot and one spot only. Even if I have to walk 20 feet to get a roll of tape, I'm going to leave it there because if I reorganize, I'll never find it.
Yeah. And potentially having things disorganized would be dangerous based on the materials that you're using.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with a mild grade of spring steel, that metal banding that lumber yards throw out after a shipment of 2x4s come in. But anyway, it's very springy. The employees of the home improvement stores push it into the dumpster. It pops out. The ends are pokey. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
it's not a friendly material for the most part.
That's awesome. Yeah, I loved your quote, waiting to be tamed. And I was sharing with a friend that I was so excited for this today. And they said, ooh, that sounds really dangerous. Like, that sounds like a really dangerous material he's working with. So, would you show us your arms and your hands and what might be happening with them?
Well, I've been away from the basket weaving for a couple months because of school. And today I just started. So I spent 4 or 5 hours, and it's been a little tough. Um, but I'm okay. It's not that bad. But I've had the metal strapping come hit me in the safety glasses. I actually chipped a tooth. I'm weaving these circular and oval shapes. As I'm wrapping like the 1.25 inch heavier gauge steel around, it sometimes gets loose and comes flying around. And so now I've learned to work below my neck. I always wear gloves and safety glasses. But I basically have a tetanus farm in the backyard where all the rusty metal resides.
Yeah, so you have the grandchildren playing all the time in the studio then, huh?
Oh, they love the metal. So
That's awesome.
when I drill the metal, there's these little squigglies, little chips that come out of the metal. And when I trim little pieces, anyway, the floor in my shop after a session is covered with these little sharp, pokey things. And when the grandkids come in, they usually get their foot jabbed. And so they've learned to have their shoes on.
Yeah.
So beware.
Yeah, I just love that line, waiting to be tamed, and can't wait to hear some more about these first metal baskets in our next video. It's so impressive.
The first metal baskets were created for an international design competition using reclaimed materials in the mid-90s. Those first metal baskets won several awards and eventually transformed into my summer income. My first art show ever, the Bellevue Art Museum Fair, I wove 60 metal baskets, sold 40 pieces in the first 2 days, and won Best of Show. I started at the top, and I was ready to quit my full-time job at the university after that weekend. However, my prices were low, and I knew that I couldn't keep this pace if I was to stay sane and save my hands from the repetitive work. I had to figure out a sustainable strategy. The first baskets had no added color, using the ubiquitous black strapping from lumberyards, along with galvanized and rusted banding. It was actually my young daughter who suggested adding color, which opened up many possibilities and combinations that you see today. The baskets continue to evolve each year using random weaving, incorporating sheet metal and street signs, as well as experimenting with different shapes, sizes, and proportions.
These are truly so remarkable. My goodness. And way to kick off with Best of Show and great sales. That's remarkable. What did that feel like for you in your first
That
venture
was
out?
that was insane. People have asked me in the past, have you ever done the farmers market? Or have you done the Saturday this fair or whatever? No, I just went to the Bellevue Art Museum Fair, which is like the largest uh, outdoor art festival in Washington. And anyway, so I was amazed when I got there to set up my booth, which I just fabricated. I had never had a booth. The press were waiting there for me, and because I got the announcement about Best of Show at the beginning there, so they were recording me setting up, and it was crazy. But a lot of people came um, to purchase things, to purchase the baskets, and a lot of discussions. It was exhausting, but just thrilling. And I thought, boy, if I could do this in a weekend, you know, I don't know, 20 times a year, I could make a living.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you learned about Best of Show before the show started. That's pretty cool to
And
know.
not all shows do that, but
Yeah.
most of them wait till halfway through. But they want the artists that win awards to be recognized so that the patrons can go visit those booths.
That's
And they
awesome.
give you a flag or a banner or some kind of thing in your booth that identifies. And there's different categories. And
That's awesome. Tell us about how you chose baskets as the way you were going to weave this very dangerous material.
well, there was an international, um, basically upcycling competition. The word sustainability still wasn't in our vocabulary. This is 1995, and there was this competition. I challenged my students to enter it, and I said, I'll enter it with you because there's a professional and a student category. And so I'm told, go find a material that's everywhere, but being thrown out, and not really being upcycled or recycled. And so that weekend I was at it was Home Depot, and I was looking for some lumber for the deck, and I spotted that black banding underneath the decking material, and I pulled it out. So, oh my gosh, people hate this stuff. I'm going to use this. I went and got some more with the help of an employee from the dumpster, and went home, and I wove this pathetic little basket, showed it to my wife, and she said, this is the most asinine thing you've ever dreamed up. I said, okay, I got to make a better one. The material is very strong, but that's how it started. And I kept doing it. And that competition, two or three of my students won awards, and I won an award in the professional category for the basket as well. So that kind of launched this whole business and artistic endeavor.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we can't wait to hear more about that and your next basket venture up.
The metal Peacock Basket. It begins with long pieces of recycled pallet strapping, which are collected at lumberyards or purchased in 90-pound coils. Some straps are painted, while others are left in their natural state or rusted. The bands are first measured and then cut to length. Using a custom metal bending device made from a 4-inch hinge, the bands are bent at a 90-degree angle and left with a generous, soft radius at each bend. The U-shaped pieces are then laced together to form the overall shape of the basket. It is then attached to a turntable fabricated from an old drafting stool. Once firmly attached, the weaving begins. The narrow strapping was painted and scraped previously and is much more flexible than the wider banding. Various color and banding width patterns are chosen, and the weaving becomes methodical as each layer is woven and individually tucked in. The final top bands are riveted to capture the vertical pieces and prevent them from sticking out. Rivets are also used to fasten the handles. The basket then sits outside for a week to rust and acquire a little more character. A final clear coat is sprayed on each basket to seal the painted surfaces and provide a smooth finish.
I'm just finding your videos so enchanting and the narrative of both storytelling and methodology. I love that.
You know, none of us like to hear our own voice. So I always laugh when I see these, but anyway, little home movies of the process.
Those are very professional best of show home movies.
Thank you.
Would you share a little bit about the narrative piece to your work? So the storytelling that we're hearing about through the videos.
Well, a lot of the stories come from the material.
Yeah.
So I actually, well, when I first began, I would hunt for this banding at lumber yards, logging facilities. I needed the thicker, wider stuff. The thin stuff every lumberyard has, but the 1.25 inch, there's even 2-inch wide banding that's used for strapping bulldozers to flatbed train cars. And so as I discovered this material, this material came from Anacortes. Oh, this came from Seattle. This came from this train yard. And so there's a lot of stories in just where the material came from. I found a company that was going out of business that would sell or that sold steel banding strapping, and they're going out of business. I was able to get literally 2 tons of it delivered to my house, and I've been using that as well. So kind of recycling it. I mean, they weren't gonna do anything with it, but you know, every art piece has a story. The Peacock Basket, for example, was initially a commission to design a vertical rectangular magazine holder. Oh. As I created the U-shaped pieces and I lifted them up in the middle, the bottom bent out and these vertical pieces splayed out like peacock feathers. And I said, oh my gosh, that's perfect. So I put a block of wood underneath that flat bottom, curved it down, screwed, attached it to my little turntable. And I had this like radial peacock pattern, and I wove. It took like 3 days to figure out how to finish it. The first couple didn't even have handles, but it evolved into probably the most popular basket I sell today.
Yeah. So that's a recurring format for you that you use, the Peacock Basket format.
The Peacock Basket, and then there's the Ovalicious. They all have their names. The Bullet. Those are just the simple cylindrical shapes. But what's interesting as you create a base and these vertical splines, as you start weaving, things start to happen as you go upward. Sometimes things lean outward, sometimes they lean inward. Some of it depends on how much tension you're putting on, each individual strip as you're weaving it. So I've started with square bases, and by the time you get 3 feet up, it's round.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of the material, and I think it's an important thing that I always tell my students: figure out what the material wants to do. It will tell you.
Yeah.
And don't fight it. If you're fighting it, you're not doing something right. So let the material go the way it wants to go. It has certain properties, and it wants to do what it wants to do, and you just have to discover that in each material.
How do you get present with the materials? What's your process like with that you can really embrace where the material is looking to go and looking to be?
Well, if it's a new material to me, I cut it, I glue it, rivet it, I weld it, I bend it, I just try everything, scratch it, pound it, heat it, and see what it likes, what it doesn't like.
Yeah.
But in the case of the baskets, it's a very linear material and it's flat and it wants to stay flat. It doesn't want to twist. And so there's limitations, but the base, when you start, that really drives the rest of the shape. It's a square base, an oval base, round base, curved base. It'll give you a different result as you start going upward.
That's an amazing journey and story with those baskets and materials. That's amazing.
Look, my hand's healed.
Was that a set? But show us your arm. You have an arm one too, right?
Oh, I don't know. I can't. Yeah, maybe there's a little bit of. Anyway, there's a lot of nicks and cuts, but I get a tetanus shot every 3 years. The doctor said I only need it every 10 years, but when I told him what I was doing, he said, "Well, we'll give you an extra booster every 3 years."
That's amazing. Well, let's hear a little bit about a slightly less dangerous medium that inspired some of your future work.
Thanks. For years, I have sat in the men's section of quilt shops waiting for my wife to buy the latest fat quarters and search for the perfect print. The men's section is comprised of a single rickety chair and a stack of dated Sports Illustrated magazines. Surrounded by color and the sound of Olfa rotary cutters slicing through fabric, consciously or unconsciously, the idea of metal quilts was brewing. Then one day, as I was cleaning up after weaving several baskets, I noticed colorful metal strips on the shop floor. They created an interesting pattern, randomly scattered on the concrete. I immediately began to piece these scraps and strips into a composition. I used double-stick tape to adhere the strips to a masonite panel. I couldn't stop. I put together dozens of compositions, adding old street signs, license plates, and started using rivets to fasten the pieces. I graduated to wider pieces of steel, and it wasn't long before I was adding found objects to create thematic stories in metal. These quilts won't keep you warm at night, but hopefully they will warm your hearts.
It's just amazing. Just super amazing. So, the compositions, that's so wonderful. We have some really great questions coming in. So fun to hear about the inspiration from the men's section in the quilt shop. So would love to hear more about that journey with you, of how you sort of pivoted the dimensions of the materials that you were working with, and this journey of composition.
Well, it's all about the hands. And I'm not kidding. Weaving metal is very strenuous on the hands and arms. And I couldn't, most of my work is done 3 months in the summer. And after a week or so of weaving the metal, my hands are starting to ache. And after 2 weeks, it just gets pretty painful. Anyway, so I needed something to rest my hands. I still wanted to use the metal. I found I saw those metal strips on the floor and oh my gosh, this is perfect for a wall piece. And I call them metal quilts because fabric quilters piece fabric. They cut it and sew it together. And I'm piecing metal and putting it together into different compositions. The found objects came a little bit later, and those really have stories. I would scour antique shops, find my own precious little tchotchkes and toys and things that might well lend to a theme. And also, when the baskets are presented at the art shows, they are sitting on a low shelf around the perimeter of the booth. There's nothing on the wall. And so I always needed to have something up above. Mm-hmm. I did hang baskets before, but I would have people come up to the basket and say, "Oh, I love this basket hanging in the corner, but I don't want a hanging basket." I said, "No, it's not a hanging basket. I just have it up there to show." "Oh no, it's a hanging basket." I don't have anywhere to hang it. Anyway, but the metal quilts complement the baskets. I use the same paints, the same banding. I add a lot of sheet metal and signs and things like that as well. But they pair nicely together.
Yeah. Yeah. So great question from the audience. What's a story of one of the metal quilts that really carries some pervasive strength for you? Maybe one of the found objects that you really appreciated finding, or share a story of one of those quilts.
There was a gentleman and wife who saw my work. I believe it was at the Anacortes Art Festival. Yeah, Anacortes Art Festival. And they lived in Bellingham. And they came to my home a week after the show and said, would you please make a custom quilt for us? Here's license plate from my car. Here are some golf pieces and some other, most of the things were metal, but these were meaningful objects in this couple's life.
Yeah.
And they said, take as long as you want. We want it roughly, 2 feet by 3 feet, but that could change. Just use your artistic judgment. And they gave me these precious, mementos, and I put those in the art piece. And I'll always remember that. And since that was the first one, and then I told people, from then on, hey, if you have something you want me to put in a piece, I've done a few more over the years, but.
That's amazing. And let's hear some more in our next video.
Sounds good. Metal quilts portray stories through a colorful array of rusty steel and forgotten objects that balance technology and the primitive. Traditional fabric quilters piece fabric squares or blocks together to form a quilt. Metal quilts follow a similar process, but instead of fabric, metal is precisely cut and pieced into various patterns and compositions. The metal quilt journey begins with leftover banding from the baskets and is complemented with other materials such as sheet metal, old street signs, and found objects which are carefully composed on a variety of substrates. The compositions are loosely configured and rearranged many, many times, sometimes for days, before they are permanently fastened and/or framed. Finding and gathering the materials is just as exhilarating as assembling the pieces. And each metal quilt has a unique material story waiting to be told.
That's amazing. Would you share with us a great question from the audience about this notion of rearranging pieces and simultaneously creating these quilts and compositions?
Well, you've seen chefs cooking multiple pots on the stove and things in the oven. Well, usually what happens, I begin a metal quilt and the composition's going well. I have an idea, and all of a sudden I say, okay, it lacks something, and nothing I'm doing is helping. So I put that aside on the workbench. I start another one.
Yeah.
And before long, there's 4 or 5 laying out on the workbenches at different levels and stages of progression. And then, I'll have an idea for the first one the next day. I'm gonna add, it needs some purple. And I'll swap out a few pieces, or it needs this little object. And it's almost like I know it when I see it. And a lot of it's about color and pattern. And again, if there is a found object, how does that relate, or how does that highlight or accent the piece? So it's neat to see them all going at the same time. I run out of workspace a lot of times, so I bring them outside on the deck or wherever. But it's a very iterative process. And I usually know when I don't want to overthink it, but I usually know when it's ready, when I put the final little touch, okay, that's it. And then those pieces are adhered, riveted, or attached in some way.
Do they tend to be simultaneously complete?
No, usually
No?
not.
Yeah.
But with deadlines, with an art festival coming up, you get into this production mode.
Yeah.
And so then those days get really productive. I mean, I get a lot of things done. There's nothing like a deadline to get you going.
That's right. We learn that as teachers, don't we?
Yeah.
What do you like to do to get yourself in a space to be methodical, storytelling, sort of Zen-like movement? What types of things do you like to do to get in
I
that?
love to go out and mountain bike and kayak, and probably my favorite though is skiing.
Awesome.
And it clears my mind. But as far as the art part goes, I see art everywhere, and I see inspiration everywhere, whether it's just in my studio or outside or driving in the car. I'll even pause the TV and take a picture of something on the TV because the color combination or some kind of pattern, or spotted something that gave me an idea. I also have sketchbooks all around the house, and in these sketchbooks, I have lots of drawings and lots of writing in this one. Anyway.
Oh, that's awesome. I love how it spans the binding of the page.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it'll go.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been doing more writing than sketching, but anyway.
That's
There's a
excellent.
lot of things to be inspired about if your eyes are open. When I remember driving with my mother once in LA, and I said, "Mom, look at the cornice molding on that building." And she goes, "What? Look at that filigree and that detail." And she goes, "How do you see that stuff?" And I go, "Well, I'm looking for it, and
Yeah.
sometimes, well, some people don't look for that. They're looking at another part of life that they're driving by." Anyway,
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. Let's learn some more in the next video.
let's roll it. The outdoor juried art festivals are a fast and concentrated way to sell art to the public. I experimented with both gallery sales and online sales, but the pace was glacial. On the other hand, art festivals are very interactive, fast-paced, and customers love meeting the artist. They can hear stories firsthand behind each piece and better understand the spirit of the work when they experience an entire collection. As artists, we bond with other artists who become part of our gypsy caravan, traipsing across the country throughout the summer, and each festival becomes a reunion with our artist friends. But festival shows are not easy. Most people don't realize how risky being a festival artist is. We work like crazy creating art that both fulfills our creative vision and that hopefully people will want to buy. Designing and constructing a compelling booth space, spending time and money applying to shows that we may or may not get into, paying thousands of dollars in booth fees, gas, hotels, and a million other little things you'd never dream of, and then schlepping the art thousands of miles, hoping it doesn't rain.
Do you think the art shows help you develop ever more empathy for our students?
Yes, absolutely. The art shows teach me patience. People come in your booth all day long asking the same question: How long does it take to make a basket? And things like that. That it's like, well, it takes 22 years and 2 days to make a basket. But yeah, I learn how to talk to people, complete strangers, and these dialogues happen instantaneously. Um, Also, kind of tangential to your question, is every skill that I've learned as an industrial designer actually applies in the art world. I remember an artist coming to me and said, "Oh, I want to do art, but I'll have to pay someone to do my business cards. Oh, I have to pay a photographer to photograph my work. Oh, I have to pay someone to do my website. Oh, I have to, on and on and on." It's like, wait, I know how to do all that. I was trained well as an industrial designer and have those skills already. The art part is actually the difficult part. Some of these shows are very competitive. there's a show called Cherry Creek Art Festival in Denver, and they have about 2,100 applicants for 250 spots. And it's, there's even international artists that enter. So I just, I pinch myself when I get into some of those high-end shows. So.
What are some of the places that we could see your art, or some of the favorite spots for it, or most surprising spots for it?
Well, I pretty much strictly do outdoor festivals now. I've tried galleries. You can see all the work online, the Rivet Studios website.
Awesome.
I have pretty much all my inventory there. But I've had shows, but oh my gosh, it's just a lot of work. I mean, like a gallery type things with very little success. Being in person, buyers want to meet the artist. They want to hear the stories firsthand. They want to meet you, and they can say, "Oh, I met the artist, and I have this on my floor, on my wall," and a lot of those customers come back. So it's not just fulfilling my personal artistic vision, but it's also sharing it with others that are willing to come and see it and buy it and support the arts.
Yeah, we can be collectors of your work.
That's right.
That's very possible. What are you looking forward to about this summer?
Well, the shows are opening up.
Yeah.
So I have 3 shows this summer. And the first one's in Park City, Utah, and that's the first weekend in August. The next one's in Edmonds, just down the street.
Cool.
And that's the last weekend in August. And then a show in the Denver show is Labor Day weekend.
That's awesome.
And then there's another one in the fall, in November, the La Quinta, which is in the Palm Springs area. You saw a photo of that on the last image. That's a beautiful show, and it's ranked one of the top shows in the nation. And it's great to be down there. Usually it's in March, but they moved it to November this year.
So, audience question: if we if we want to be a groupie, would you carry the art back for us to Bellingham from the art show?
I'll do anything.
Awesome. And what advice might you have for people that are starting out?
Well, find your voice. Find that medium that really resonates with you. And a seasoned artist told me, it was probably the 2nd or 3rd year of doing this, that you don't pick what your medium, it'll pick you.
Wow.
So I actually tried watercoloring. I've tried acrylic painting. I've done found object masks. You saw one of those in the video in my studio. It's like a giant elephant,
Yeah.
if you remember. But boy, it kept coming back to metal. And, I can't even define why exactly, but I know that I have a deep satisfaction once I'm able to tame the material, bend it, move it, paint it, get the patina that I want. It's very satisfying, and it's a very permanent piece. And as an industrial designer, where form follows function, I have artwork that is actually functional as far as the baskets go. And so that also just, it's part of who I am. And lastly, it's the reclaimed materials. My parents grew up in the Great Depression. They saved everything. We had a crawl space full of materials. And I used those as my palette to make things as a child and growing up. And, finding the materials is just as fun as creating the art. I have been to metal scrapyards between Des Moines, Iowa, down to California, Utah, Oregon, up to here, and have found wonderful pieces of patinaed metal that I've used in my pieces. And so that's just as exhilarating.
That's amazing. Great reasons to road trip with a very large trailer.
Well,
So
the idea is to sell all the art so the vehicle's empty, and then I fill the vehicle.
Brilliant,
But
brilliant.
if I didn't have a good show, I've only got a little bit of room.
That's awesome. Well, here's to a summer full of good shows. This was so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your studio and your work. We had some audience questions that we weren't able to get to, but hopefully we can follow up with them. And what great audience questions and a fantastic time together.
Well, Meg, thank you for taking the time to interview, and it was great to see Sean. I'll have to visit him this summer.
And remind us, if you wouldn't, how we can get to your work.
Well, the website's the quickest way, and it's rivetstudios.net. And you can also find all the shows that I'm doing listed on that website as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you, Arūnas, and thank you, Meg, for leading us through this. I remember, I believe I was either a junior or a senior in Arūnas's classes when he came in with handfuls of these metal pallet strappings and was so excited and just energetic around what he could do with these and the potential that was in them. Little did I know that it would be this amazing journey, and it has just been my privilege to watch as this journey unfolded for Arūnas and see the pieces that have come out of that process. Tons of great questions, as Meg said. We haven't gotten all of them. Sorry about that. Obviously, time always creeps up on us. We'll try and get to some of those after the fact. This recording will be sent out, and you'll get that in email, as well as contact info and where to find Arūnas's art. So if you're interested, you can contact him and get those. And as always, these studio tours are brought to you by the Western Washington University Alumni Association. And we appreciate you coming and supporting the university and hearing these amazing stories from faculty, staff, and alumni, and the community that supports Western. Thank you again.